Alright. Okay. Don't have to. You send to me. Send the Google file to me. Send to the link, email.
All right, and we're ready to start. Okay, and hi everyone. My name is Adrian. We're from the Band Directors Association of Singapore, and today this is part of our series where we are going online with the pros of all instruments. And today we had so many people come up to share so far. We had horns, we had the saxes, and we had the flutes. And now we have on our panel 4 very established percussionists, which I'll leave them to share more with you later. First of all, we have Ramu. Ramu, can you wave a hand?
Hi everyone.
That's Ramu. Hi, Ramu. Ramu is currently a teacher in SOTA, and maybe you could share with us what have you been up to this past week with COVID.
This past week, well, as a teacher at SOTA, as you can expect right now, I've been working on all the HBL lessons, so conducting lessons, and from this very room, which you see right now at home.
It's a very cool room. I mean, the blue wall and everything. My God.
Oh, thank you. That was a choice by the wife, I have to add. But I mean, we like the color, so yeah, we just
okay.
So we set this up so that we can use this space for recordings and whatever else we do.
Okay, cool. And next up we have Joachim. Joachim, can you please wave your hands? Hi, Joachim. So what have you been up to this past 2 weeks?
Mostly teaching as well online, but also practicing, trying to get out some new material, for sort of internet collaborations with friends and things like that.
I read that you're currently with Ting as well.
Yes, Teng Ensemble. We actually
Is Ting doing anything during this period?
Yes, we did it before the circuit breaker. We recorded a few tunes, and we'll be releasing them over the next couple of weeks. Actually, we just released one. We did a cover of Billie Eilish "Bad Guy," arranged by another drummer called Eugene Xiao, but he plays bass for Teng Ensemble, and it's quite cool. You should check it out.
Eugene Xiao, the percussionist Eugene Xiao.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, interesting. Okay, and next we have Ming-Kei, Mr. Lim Ming-Kei. Hi, Ming-Kei.
Hi, can you hear me? Yes.
Yes, Ming-Kei, who plays with the Singapore Symphony Orchestra as well. Can you share with us what you've been doing in this past few weeks?
These 2 weeks mainly teaching online with the youth orchestra group and making a video for them, ensemble video.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you, Ming-Kei. And last but not least, we have Lok Chua, who is from the Singapore Chinese Orchestra. Hi, Lok Chua.
Hi. Yeah. This past few weeks, I've been doing some video editing for the YouTube SEO. There's some videos about us playing at our home. So
I saw.
Yeah. So
Confluence,
I'm doing
right?
Yes, Confluence.
Yeah,
then there's some percussion stuff going on that's going to come up in a few days.
Yeah. Okay, so I mean, we're here today because we're here to address some of the common burning issues that students, percussionists in particular, percussionist students always face in their daily band practices. And we actually had quite a few questions submitted, so get ready. All right, I guess first up, let's talk about warm-ups. You know, as the band director, as a band director, we always have the standard warm-up for winds. And sometimes some percussion sections would go out to do warm-ups, or they could join in, but they find that the exercises that the band is doing with them might not be as relevant. So what are your opinions on warm-ups for percussionists during band practice and before self-practice, of course? Yeah, anyone? Ramu?
Yeah, okay, sure. Maybe I'll start off. I think for me as a percussionist, I look at warm-ups in two different perspectives, or two different lenses. One of it being the actual physical warm-up, because we're so much. I mean, every musician is part of the instrument they play, and for us, because it's such a physical instrument, I think being physically warmed up, like doing physical stretches before starting my playing, I think that's the first thing which I'll ask my students to do first, as part of the physical warm-up, like how people who run, people who do swim and so on, you all have to do some sort of physical stretch. So I ask my kids to do that first, and then after that work on very simple exercises, which later on I think some of the other panelists will be sharing later on. So I have a two-phase kind of a thing going on. What about you guys?
Yeah, that's interesting. Usually I just go straight to the pad and do warm-ups. I mostly use Stick Control by Benson, sort of George Lawrence Stone, and just going through the motions, starting slow and then going to a moderate tempo, and then just kind of push myself just a bit each time I warm up. Yeah, at least that's how I approach warm-ups.
What about Ming-Kay?
Yes.
I know you're a band director as well, Ming-Kay. And so do you assign a separate warm-ups for your band for your band percussionists as well?
Actually, it's better that at the top when I go to orchestra rehearsal, right?
Yeah.
Usually you just go in and usually with a practice pad you warm up your stroke, single stroke, your strokes first. And then after it depends on what instruments you're playing. Let's say you play cymbals or bass drum, then you warm up on the instruments before you get started in the orchestra. Yeah.
How about you, Lotra? Oh, sorry. Yes, Ming-Kay.
Yeah. But standard like warm up on your hands, you probably you use like Lawrence Stone exercises like Joachim has shared. And then if you play cymbals or bass drum, you can do the exercise on the instruments.
Okay. Lotra, how about what do you recommend?
Okay, usually I'll do like 8 on the hands, play 8 times on the hands, something like that. And then I'll do some semi-quavers and things like that, just to warm up the hands, or warm up the muscles. And then sometimes I'll just go to the mallets, play some scales, play arpeggios, and recap some of the stuff that's going to be played during the combine. So if there's a certain skills that I need to tackle, I have to play fast on the passage, I'll just slow it down. I'll play a couple of times, and then I'll speed it up slowly and go to the actual speed. Yeah.
So for band percussionists, I'm just wondering, because let's say I'm a section leader, is there a video that you recommend that I could watch or something that I can learn and bring to my section if I want to teach them a set of warm-ups? I mean, because we're listening to you, but maybe it's easier for a student to see how it's actually being done physically.
Maybe I think we could go straight into some of the exercises that you guys have prepared.
Oh, cool. Oh, yeah.
Joachim, you want to start with yours?
So okay, let me share my screen.
Sure.
Yeah, so this is taken from the George Lawrence Stone exercise book. It's really a permutation of different stickings. So if you look at the first bar, it's all single stroke starting with the right hand, and then the next bar is starting with the left hand, and then the second line we have double strokes, and the fourth bar is interesting. It's still a double stroke, but we're starting the stroke on the second right hand instead. So instead, a double stroke is right, left, right, left. But we're going to start on the second right, which becomes right, left, right, left, right. And then the third line is basically the same thing, but starting with the left hand instead. And it goes through a series of permutations from bar 7. If you look at bar 7, that's your paradiddles. So those 4 bars will be a permutation of a paradiddle starting on a different hand. And then going on to bar 11, it's just 3 on a hand, right, 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 left, right, right, right. And then so on and so forth. You can see, if you look at the sort of the hand with only one note, you see this left hand and this left hand, right? It gets moved around here. And then bar 16 here. And then bar 18 here. Okay, and the final bar is just 4 on a hand. And the way I approach this is, I can do it about numerous number of ways. I wrote there, repeat as many times as needed. You can do it once, you can do it twice, you can do it 5 times. It's really up to the individual. But you sort of go through the motion as it is. So starting from the first bar, 1, 2, 1, 2, next, 2, 1, double stroke, 2, 1, 2, and so on and so forth. And the idea of the warm-up is to have your sticks have your hands as relaxed as possible, your sticks rebound as much as possible. And a warm-up is what it is. You know, you are warming up your hands, warming up your muscles so that you can proceed to work on or practice further technical things that you need to work on. And at least that's how I do my warm-ups.
Cool. Maybe before we go further into these drum exercises, we had a question come in on, should I learn both traditional and match grips, or is one enough? Could one of you share more about what you mean by traditional or what you mean by match grips?
I think there's no, in my opinion, I think there's no difference between traditional or match grip. There is a difference in the sound and the quality, but it's technique is just a way of expressing yourself, and it shouldn't be, I have to learn this because it's cool. I mean, traditional grip does look cool, and they use it a lot in DCI, marching drum corps, because it's very, it looks very neat, and especially when everyone does it together. You know, you see all the stick heights coming up and down this way, and so there is a purpose for traditional, but there's also a purpose for match grip. And for me, it's what works best for you. So you don't necessarily have to learn both, although it's good to know just a bit of each.
Could someone maybe show us what is a traditional and what is match?
Okay, match grip will be something like this. All right, so left hand and right hand is the same. And then traditional grip, you just hold it this way. Oh, this one develops from last time when the drums, they play on the horseback. So it's easier to play sideways. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, okay. I see.
I think from a band director's perspective, because I've had conversations about this before, I think a lot of other percussion instruments that we use in general, I mean, if we're talking about things like timpani, talking about things like mallets and so on, the general grip that we use is something similar to the match grip. So, in terms of the beginning percussionist, normally I would recommend just going straight into learning the match grip, unless, of course, like what Joachim had said earlier on, if you're going to be in a marching band, and of course, if you need those stick tricks and whatever else, for the visual aspect of things, then yes, learning the traditional grip would be definitely be a plus. But also to support what Joachim said, I totally agree that, again, it is your own choice. I mean, like on drum set, I normally play match grip. And sometimes I do switch to traditional because I feel it is a bit more comfortable for me depending on the style which I play on drum set. So again, it's really about exploring and trying to see what works for you if you're doing it on drum set or on snare drum per se.
Cool. So we had another question about marching grip. I think he meant the traditional grip. How do you do double strokes with traditional grip?
Well, double strokes, I think, is the same thing as a match grip. It's just you have to master to make sure that you make sure that it's even, it's still a bounce. So instead of forcing it down and control every stroke, it is match grip or traditional grip. You just have to make sure it bounces. That's the main thing. Okay, no matter what grip you're using. So if you're not bouncing it, that means you're not doing it correctly. So you can't play fast. Yeah.
Okay.
I think the concept is still the same. Match grip and traditional concept is the same, where you have arm, wrist, and finger, and some arm, wrist, and finger. So it's actually the concept still is the same. Three basic strokes. Right,
Okay.
arm. So you still think this is finger stroke, wrist stroke, arm stroke. Same as right hand, arm, finger, arm, wrist, finger. Yes.
Ming-Kei, you can't talk
Yes.
when you are playing. Otherwise we cannot hear you talk. Yeah.
All right. So
thanks.
I'm saying that this concept is still the same. You still have the basic arm, wrist, and finger stroke. Where you do a double stroke.
Okay. Another question that came in, we're talking about drumming exercises now. How do we play paradiddles smoothly?
All right, maybe we need to go through the exercises that we have. I have, first of all, before I share the screen, we have to do something like you have to practice your doubles. First, controlled style. So you control everything just to make sure it's even. Okay, so that practice is to make sure that you can hear that even style in your double strokes. But when you go fast, you can't control everything, so you have to do a rebound. Now, the problem with rebound is that first stroke is always louder than the second stroke. So in order to make it even, the thing is you have to practice maybe an accent on the second stroke. And that's how you practice.
Cool, very cool. And okay, and you said you wanted to share something?
Yeah.
You wanted to share a screen or something?
Yes, I'll share one of the exercises to practice the practicing of the double stroke is a grid diddles.
Okay.
That's just to check to make sure that your doubles is correct. So grid diddles, exercise number 14, it goes. So we need to check with the quavers when you're playing doubles on it. To make sure that that semi-quaver is really a semi-quaver instead of triplets. Right? Or is it too tight? So we always check with quavers. Just to make sure that everything is even. So if you go through the whole exercise, you end up with like exercise number 13, you have just to make sure that everything is even out. Yeah.
Cool.
So slow practice.
Great. And I think these exercises we can make it available for all our students who are watching in now, right? Yeah. So
Yes.
This is just for everyone. If you are interested in these exercises and you didn't manage to screenshot them just now, we will be making these exercises available in the comments in the Facebook chat later below. Cool. Let's. Anyone else has anything else to add in? No? Okay, we'll move on.
I think maybe
Oh, yes.
before we jump into anything else, I think something which a lot of people forget. I know we're not just demonstrating with this one key friend of ours, which is our metronome. I think again for all our practice exercises. I mean, right now we're just demonstrating it without the metronomes per se. But I think one key thing to take note of is that for all of us here, we do still practice all these warm-ups and exercises with a metronome, with a click, because in the end of the day, we really want to make sure that we're consistent. And the same thing goes to anyone who's watching this as well. Make sure that you always practice these exercises with your metronome, or a subdividing metronome at least.
That's a very good reminder.
Yeah.
always with the metronome. It's a best friend.
Exactly. Even if it's a simple warm up exercise, or even because I've seen a lot of percussionists in the band scene where the kids go out and they do their own rehearsals. Sometimes they just forget that metronome, and then if everybody's trying to share one metronome, they can't hear it, especially if you're hitting so loud. It's impossible to be heard per se. So I think that's something to take note of.
Cool. All right. The next question: how do we master double stroke rolls?
Well, double stroke roll is the same, right?
Same.
I mean,
It's the same.
It's the same.
Okay. How do we relax my hands? How to relax my hands and body when I'm practicing difficult or fast tempo passages?
Maybe I can just chime in for that one really quickly. I think because the first problem is whenever we start to play difficult and fast tempo passages, I think it's more of I wouldn't say it's a psychological thing that we need to overcome, but a lot of times I notice a lot of students, once they see that it's something difficult or a lot of black notes on a piece of paper, which is our score, this is what they end up doing. So I may be playing, and then eventually when they see something which is really tough, they go, oh no, it's tough. And then the first natural thing would be they stop breathing, or they forget to breathe because they're not thinking about the music phrases and so on. Compared to the other wind instrumentalists as one. Number two, they stiffen up the shoulders, as you could have seen just now. Me, I was doing this, and then suddenly, eventually they start to, kind of lose that control that they had because the arms are so tense, and then they forget that by them thinking like, oh my goodness, it's very hard. The natural body reaction would be to clench up. I think that's the first thing that they need to be aware of first, of their own body and how it reacts. So learning how to breathe in time, or even just learning breathing as you play, because there's a lot of times, and even I'm guilty of it when I first started, where whenever I see a tough passage on any instrument, I tend to go breathe in, hold it, and just go, and then whatever it's done, then I kind of like release, and then I suddenly feel so much pain, so much tension. So that's why I think that's something which a lot of percussionists don't really think about first before, talking about how to relax, because if you don't know how to physically relax on your own end, it's going to be impossible to do so. Especially if you're trying to play fast, practicing and so on.
I think this is same like wind players. When we see many notes coming, we tend to, oh my god, cramp and everything cramp. But how? I mean, when you say relax, for example, I mean, let's say you're playing the drum set, and you've got something difficult coming up, and it's coming. How to relax? What do you mean by relax? How do you? I mean, you're okay. Or yeah,
I think it takes practice and experience also. Yeah. A lot of, like, when I used to deal with a lot of tension as well. Like I would be playing. I mean, if I used to play something like this, super stiff, but now I sort of loosen up and relaxed, and I just let the sticks flow naturally. And I think a lot of it comes from when I'm doing my warm-ups and just trying to be as relaxed as I can, as smooth as I can. And by doing that all the time, every day, it will somehow naturally flow into your practice session, your practicing, your performing as well. And it just becomes one. And so it takes a lot of diligent practice as well. It doesn't mean, oh, I have a difficult passage, I just need to work on that. Exactly. It actually it's all the work that's done before to be able to play relaxed and play smoothly and just calm down. And so it takes a lot of practice and experience also, because I mean there are also a lot of times where you're playing and that there's a difficult passage coming up, but your mind is always thinking of it, and when you get there, you're too caught up in that moment that you miss one note or you miss one sticking, and the whole bar is gone, and then you feel very bad for the rest of the performance. But I think we tend to focus too much on those things, and also having fun, like thinking about having fun, it should be the main thing for music, not only percussion but music in general. So and if we think about the fun, we don't really think about, I have to play it correctly. And so it's sort of you're just channeling your energy into a different mindset so that you're able to relax a bit more, to focus a bit more.
Cool.
And perhaps adding on to Joachim, I think, and ultimately, for no matter how simple a part is or how complex a part could be, it's about building that muscle memory, which goes back to like what Joachim was adding on. that continuous repetition of practicing all these passages, slow, fast, be it loud, soft, and so on, with different dynamic levels. Because again, sometimes, if let's say you're very used to a certain way of playing it, and then suddenly the conductor decides, okay, let's just play it slightly softer than what you're more comfortable with. That also can add a bit of tension to musician that's playing. So being aware of all these things and practicing in different dynamics and speeds and so on, that will again eventually help you be a little bit more relaxed. But again, that is up to the individual to practice and work on, because that's something which a lot of students ask me, like, how do I relax? I'm like, I can't physically tell you what to do or change so that you will be relaxed, because it all comes from here as well, and also how comfortable you are with your instrument.
Confidence and everything.
Yes,
So,
yeah.
Absolutely.
I think just to add in, is also about adding vocabulary to whatever you have. It's just like making a sentence. So if you have more fanciful vocabulary, you learn more, like your rudiments and fundamentals and things like that. The more you practice, the muscles will remember how you do it. So it just happens without thinking. So you just have to improve your vocabulary, like playing a lot of paradiddles, double paradiddles, double strokes, multiple strokes, roll and whatever, and then you just come. So the more you practice, the better you are.
Yep.
Yes. Can I add on that? You should maybe
Sure.
Start slowly, then maybe you work on a passage and you increase your metronome by 4, slowly by 4, and get a little bit faster and crank up that speed. Yeah. That will really help, so that you don't need to tense up, and you don't just straight away you work on a very fast passage. Yeah. Work slowly first.
okay, cool. I had a question for snare drum. On snare drum, how do we practice rudiments and rolls? Is this something that
Rolls as in multiple stroke rolls. There's
That's what
open
we did.
roll.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
maybe you could share
yeah.
all them,
Okay.
all the rolls?
Maybe I'll just play a bit. This is a double stroke roll, which is 2 times per hand. I play it clearer. So if I play semiquavers and then there's double stroke roll or open roll. Now you have a triple stroke roll or multiple stroke roll, which is bounced more than 3 times or more. So basically, I'm still playing in semiquaver speed. I'm not increasing my pulse. So if I play an open roll with a bass roll, well, that's how you practice. But make it even. So you have to do it slow.
Anyone else have other roles to demonstrate?
Yeah, I think the main key thing is that what happens is actually the fulcrum, your grip has to it changes, the pressure you add inside changes the number of bounces that you create, right? So again, returning to that double stroke thing, right? So that, like a double stroke to a multiple bounce, you don't change the speed of the skeleton, right? But what happens is that I change the pressure that I apply inside here to get that. So I can do a double stroke roll, triple bounce, multiple bounce, and it's all just controlled by here, and it's not I didn't change anything here. It's all controlled from the fulcrum, and that, I think that's the most important thing, that if you're practicing rolls, it's just important to take note of them, so that you know what you are doing, and you know how to fix them as well.
Cool. Anyone else has anything to add? Nope. All right, this comes from another person. if a percussionist has lost touch for a long period of time, what are some of the practices they can do to restart their momentum? I don't know. Start from scratch again.
I think
Yes.
I think
Yeah.
I mean, if this percussionist has not played for a long period of time, again, because if this person has done all these warm up exercises before, picking it up, it'll be like riding a bicycle. So it's really about starting again slowly, redeveloping those muscles, and then strengthening exercises like that. So,
Yes.
yeah, so basically going always back to the core of understanding how we play is big, in terms of technique. For going back to all of that, I think that would be a starting point, and then they'll be able to build up
Yeah.
that momentum.
Okay. How do you decide on the sticking for a snare drum? I mean, can someone share on what are the kinds of stickings that we can use?
I think it really depends on the piece, and also again in terms of familiarity with all these different rudiments. Because again, in the end of the day, while we learn all these rudiments, a lot of students always don't put two and two together, where they think of, oh, I'm just learning a paradiddle just because I need to be able to do a paradiddle. But it's really thinking about the applicability of that situation. So, for example, if you have a paradiddle which you think will be suitable at this point in time, or maybe the piece requires you to do that. Not only just for snare drum, but let's say for timpani, for example. I'm sure the rest would agree. It would not make sense for me if I'm playing a timpani to go like right, left, right, right, left. I do these weird cross stitches. So if I have a situation where I have my paradiddles, I can go right, left, and utilize that particular rudiment which I've learned. And then of course, again, some of it's up to personal choice, I would say. What works for you, especially if it's your own, it's a solo piece that you're playing on your own. I don't know. What do you think, Joachim?
Yeah, a lot of I think sticking is like if you're playing a piano, everything has got to do with fingering, and it depends on the flow of it, and so the sticking also affects the flow, affects the sound, the phrasing of the piece as well. If you take a normal semi-quiver grid, I can play it in a different ways. I can do single strokes, I can do double strokes, paradiddles, and if let's say we add an accent at the start, right? I can do, which is fine. But if you want to give it a bit more sway, we can do a paradiddle, right? Then that adds a bit more flow to it instead of just going. Because somehow the single strokes with an accent at the top, at the front, is always, to me it just feels very heavy, right? Compared to a paradiddle. Right? And so, like what you said, sticking is very personal, and it's piece dependent, and also, I would say it's phrase dependent, and what works for you as well.
Anyone else has anything else to share? Nope. Okay, next question. How inclined should a snare drum be, facing away or facing towards the snare drummer? And what should the optimal height of the snare drum be?
Maybe I'll go first because I have a snare drum
Yeah.
here.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
So I actually do tilt my snare drum away from me, just because the way my stroke works is such that it comes sort of down this way. So when I tilt it in front of me, I get more leverage in terms of the sound and in terms of the weight of my sticks as well. I started out playing it flat at first, and then bit by bit, I had other teachers telling me, okay, why don't you try angling it forward? And the more I did that, the more comfortable I became, and I like the sound even better. At about snare drum height, I really feel it's what is comfortable for your body. Everyone is going to be different.
Absolutely.
And what I do for myself and what I do with my students is, I get everyone to stand up and sort of do a very kind of limbic Chinese zombie. Chinese zombie goes like this, but instead of doing that, just sort of bring it up from your forearm and have everything is relaxed, but from your forearm. And if you're doing this, right, and you hold your sticks at this height, it's probably a comfortable height for you. And so, and at least that's what I do for my students and for myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for me, No, sorry. Yeah, for me, I think the height of the snare drum, I think, is really, yeah. Again, like Joachim said, it's really dependent on the individual. So if I'm sitting down, it's also going to be very different from the next person who's playing the snare drum sitting down or standing up. And again, more for me is be like the waist level would be
Waist
sort of the general way in which I would approach the height of a snare drum. For me personally, I normally keep the snare drum placed flat. Again, that's a personal choice because I've also had some teachers also say, why not tilt the snare drum a little bit forward? But then again, for me, it's more of what works for me and what's more comfortable. And again, depending on the kind of physical setup that I may have, because sometimes if I'm sharing a snare drum with, maybe 2 or 3 other people who may prefer the snare drum to be kept at the same height, especially in a band performance setting, sometimes if, let's say if you have multiple people playing it and you don't have enough time to adjust the snare drum height or adjust the angle of, actually mainly I think that's the bigger concern, then I'll try to keep it as flat as possible, just so that if the students are used to playing that way, considering they're used to playing on xylophones, mallet instruments, and everything else on a flat surface, so I feel why not just leave it at that height. But again, it's again a very personal thing. Depends on the technique that you've built and what kind of sound you're looking for as well.
So it's either flat or away, right? Never towards you.
No, never towards
you.
Yeah. Because it's also a physical. It can be quite risky as well. Because if you have some, I don't know if you guys can see it from here, but let's say if I tilt my pad this way, and then if I'm going to be striking at an angle like this, again, it's really about thinking about injury prevention, because in the end of the day, my wrist is going to be in a very weird angle where it's actually kind of popped backwards, and there's only so much movement I can have, and it can cause injury, as you get older. Plus, also the probability of you hitting something like this and the stick kind of like rebounding backwards and kind of flipping back, or even you losing control of the stick, is also quite high. It does the second point. Thirdly, also, if you think about the angle of attack of the stick itself, it's going to be in such a weird angle that you are not going to be getting a lot of good sound if you think about it. So again, ultimately, all these changes in terms of angles and so on, is really about looking for the best sound that you want from the instrument. Because I've had situations where students are saying like, oh, my tone is not very good. This is not sounding very good per se, or maybe I'm playing behind just a little bit because it just feels uncomfortable. So when you just change the height of the instrument or change the angle, suddenly they go, oh, wait a minute, this is fine. So again, sometimes some of these problems which some students have might not be a technical problem. It could be just because of the height or an adjustment of the instrument itself. So something to think about.
And also, if you tilt towards you, like that, the sticks would not be able to rebound as much as better than this. This is easier to rebound than this. This is just against your physical style. This is easier to.
That's a good reminder to many students.
And actually, you see a lot of that. So you see a lot of this tilting in a lot of drum sets in schools, especially. You see all the toms. The drum sets are all.
They're all tilted.
Toms are all this way.
Which
it's try to get it flat.
Flatten them all. Or face outwards. Okay. I don't know. How do you play toms facing outwards?
I think the other
more challenging. Okay, then one last question on the snare drum. How would you tune a snare drum, and how do you choose the right heads for a snare drum? I mean, what's right and what's your preferred choice? I don't think there's a right head, but it's also depend on what sound you want or what sound you like at the end of the day. But maybe let's talk about tuning first. I mean, it's always a mystery to many students how to tune, how tight, how.
Joking, maybe you want to show since you have your snare drum in front. I think.
Okay, so of course you have the resonant head and stator head, right? And so the way I tune at least my drums is that you do that crisscross method, making sure that all the tension rods and the lugs are sort of tuned the same tension. And then, of course, making sure that the head is evenly, like the sound is even, sort of all throughout. What I usually do is I tune the bottom head slightly higher than the top head. A lot of people, they just crank the top head, and then that makes the drum sound very choked in the end. They're trying to tune it, it doesn't sound good, and then they tune it higher, and then it still doesn't sound good. but a lot of people, they tend to forget the bottom head, and a lot of it relies on a good sound also relies on the bottom head. So they both work in tandem, but I tune the bottom head slightly higher than the top head. And for concert snare drums, I actually tune these tension rods slightly lower than the ones here, just because it has more. It will affect the snare wires, and there will be more sort of response and things like that when you are actually playing with the snares on. Okay. I do the same for the better. Yeah, but I mean, more or less every tension rod is the same. You can have those drum dials that tell you the tension, okay, and technically, physically, it's supposed to sound the same, but of course, when you actually play them with the drumsticks, they might not sound all the same, even though on your drum dial it says, okay, all the tension is at 89 or something like that, okay. So you really still have to use your ears and test each tension rod and adjust accordingly. And then you get nice, when the drum is ringing, you'll be able to hear it, that it sounds nice. I don't have a specific note that I tune to, although there are some schools of thought where, okay, you have to tune a B flat or an A or a minor third apart, that kind of things. To me, if it sounds good, then it's good for me. Yeah. So I don't really have a specific approach in that sense. Yeah.
How about Loktra? How would you choose heads for a snare drum?
Well, the heads depends on what you use for your snare drum. Whether you are going to use brushes, are you going to just play with the drumsticks? What kind of ensemble are you playing with? Are you aiming for a dark sound or are you aiming for bright sound? Like if you are aiming for a dark sound, it also depends on your snare drum. So if you have a metal snare drums, then you'll be bright. If you have a wood-based snare drum, you'll be darker sound. And you have a double glaze, you have a like Renaissance head on your better head, you have a darker sound. You have a clear head, you'll be a brighter sound. It all depends on what you're playing, what kind of ensemble you're playing with, and what kind of music you're playing with. So it changes. So there's no definite answer to that question.
But I mean, now we're talking in a school band setting. So I mean, to all the band directors as well, and students, what is the preferred kind of, or what is the recommended kind of drum hits that we should be getting?
Okay, maybe this from my personal opinion. I'll prefer a slightly darker sound. So I'm going for a Renaissance head on the top, and then the clear head, which is the thinner skin on the bottom, so that the snares can resonate as much as possible. And the upper side, the Renaissance head is a bit thicker, so you get a darker sound.
Okay, what about the rest?
For me, I would. I'm used the Renaissance heads as well, but then because I'm thinking from the perspective of if, let's say, students need a lot of brushwork, or in case if you're doing some of those pieces which needs that clarity of a rougher surface, then sometimes I'll go for like the Remo Ambassador heads. Those they'll just have that coating which has a little bit of those. What are those materials? That material called? Off the top of my head, I don't remember, but yeah, it's very nice for brushes, I think, and that's something which I use.
It's
It's
coated.
Yeah, it's just coated. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for the name of the coating, but yeah, so it's a coated head. And again, it's quite general purpose. You can use it for for basically any piece for most of the time.
Anyone else has anything to chip in?
Something.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, something about just not about snare drum, but sometimes people forget about the tuning on the bass drum.
Oh yes.
It applies the same thing.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't tune bass drum, but that's very bad because usually bass drum comes out very boomy. There's no definition at all, so you have to think about tuning a bass drum too.
I mean, so how would you advise tuning the bass drum? I mean,
okay, for me, the head that I'm going to hit on, it depends on whether I want a more direct sound or I want a more boomy sound. Depends on whether the sound is supposed to be I'm playing with the whole band playing at fortissimo. I want just that bang and then prolong that sustain or not. I just want like a very marching sound, direct, sharp, and less resonant. So if I tune my the head that I'm hitting on slightly higher than the other side, I'm going to get a more direct sound. Okay. So if I tune it slightly lower than the other side, I'm going to get a more delayed, more sustained sound. But if I'm getting both head tuned almost the same sound, same pitch, then I'll get somewhere in between. So it depends on what kind of pieces you're playing also.
Okay, cool. Let's talk about mallets. We had some, mallet players always need to try to do like 4-sticks stuff. So how would you recommend them to get started? I mean, how to hold? Any guidance of that?
I think okay, maybe for myself, because again, like the traditional and match grips, again for mallets as well, there are different types of grips that we can use and utilize. So for me, I mean, I've tried all of them, but personally, I normally use the Burton grip. So again, similarly, I mean, it's really about understanding, how do you actually hold the sticks? What makes it more comfortable for you? Of course, there are some schools of thought where they say no, you should just use one grip and just live with that for whatever instrument that you use. But for me as well, I mean, I switch between the Burton and the Stevens grip. I don't know about you guys. Do you guys do switch around?
Yes,
You guys do
I do both grips.
both grips as well.
Stevens and
Stevens and
and
Could
Burton.
you show us what the two grips are?
okay, so this is a I don't know if you guys can see clearly.
Yep, we can.
All right, so this grip right now where I have I'm kind of holding one stick inside where let's say if this is my little small little valley of my palm. I have one stick placed right here, and then I sort of sometimes ask students to think of like you're trying to form an L shape like so, so that they're able to get this grip first. So they're holding this inner stick, or if you look at it this way, if you look at, it's technically going to be the outer stick actually. So, but this stick is physically inside. And then what I ask them to do is to form this L shape, and then take the other stick and put it on top, and then wrap it over. And the last two fingers kind of wraps around. The index finger kind of curves inwards, like as if you're trying to be a crab. Same thing with the thumb, and you kind of rest it like so, and then you bring it down. So when you naturally bring it down, once you're comfortable with this Burton grip, you should get a sort of like a 45-degree angle, let's say. Right, so that's the basic way of holding the Burton grip. For the Stevens grip, it's slightly different, where you're holding on to the last two, to the stick with the last two fingers, and then the other is actually holding on to it, something like this. So there's one stick is slightly higher than the other if you look at it straight up this way. Right? So you have these two grips. So it's getting accustomed to which one you prefer. But for me, normally I always use the Burton grip for most of my instruments, especially vibraphone and so on. In terms of exercises, I think one of the exercise, I think maybe later on, maybe I'll just drop one of those files over into so that you guys can have a look at it and share the exercises amongst yourselves. Now, of course, it's learning how to. I know you guys can hear it. Learning how to open and close. So again, getting the muscle memory of learning to be able to open it up slowly. That's the first thing which I always try to make sure that all my students are able to do. Going down from thirds to fourths to fifths, sixths, sevenths, and an octave, and then bring it back down. So same thing for both hands. Okay. So once they're physically ready with that, then any of the exercises that you've been working on for snare drum, be it paradiddles and everything else, you can start to apply. So even with just trying to make sure that both sticks come down at the same point in time. Let's say if I'm trying to do double stops, I'll try to make sure that the students are able to do things like this. So 1 E and 2 E and so left, right, or right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left. And then of course eventually trying to gain some independence. Maybe just the 2, 6 here, 1 and 3, and then 2 and 4. And then of course you can do any of the other paradiddle exercises, or even just going 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1, and and so on. So again, these exercises, there are lots of them out there. I can definitely share some of the resources with you guys later on after the end of this session.
Very cool. Minke, anything to add to that?
For me, my concept for, let's say, for beginners,
Hmm.
you should strengthen each of the sticks first. Right, you have to strengthen each one of the sticks first, and then you do single hand study. You open up. For 4 mallet is basically the lateral stroke, and then the scissor stroke is very important because you change your chord. So you need to you practice your inner sticks movement first. This is the inner stick, you move, and then you do the outer sticks movement. You keep this one stationary on one note, and then you learn to move the other sticks. All right. You can use your Lawrence Stone exercise for double for double stops. Just to strengthen your chops. All right. After this, then you can do rotation exercise. Rotation exercises. All right. Usually, I advise you to do one single hand first. Study one hand, and then the other hand, and then you put them together. And then after this, you can do in a combination stroke, like what Ramu just now done, 1, 2, 3, 4. You can do the 24 combinations, which means this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then 1, 2, 4, 3, 1, 2, 4, 3, and then one of them got 6 and times 4 will be 64 combination exercises. Yeah, basically to strengthen your chops.
I think if anyone is interested in the Stevens group, a great book to check out is Lee Howard Stevens, called Method of Movement. Yeah, it's a great book. I learned a lot from that book, and he's very detailed and he has pictures showing how you should hold your mallets as well, and it's super concise and very detailed. So if anyone's interested in Stevens group, you should check out the book.
Anyway, just in case anybody is wondering, so the instrument I was using is a mallet cat, but then because all my physical instruments are in school or at my parents' place, so that's why I had to use this as a demonstrative piece. In case anybody's wondering, I mean, it doesn't really apply for most situations. I keep this at home so that I can practice as well.
How convenient.
Hey.
Yeah. All right, so this is a question about drum set. They ask, are there any correct spots to hit on the drum set? I mean, you have the tom, floor tom, snare drum, but is there such thing as a correct spot to hit on a drum set?
I think for me, it would be generally what kind of sound you are looking for ultimately, because where you strike will determine exactly what kind of sound you produce. So if you are looking, I mean, again, for any instrument, be it a hi-hat, be it a crash cymbal, if you're changing your angle of attack, if you're changing your angle of attack, if let's say this is your cymbal and you're hitting it like this versus hitting it like that, you have a totally different sound, and that's just that same spot even. So again, really looking at what tone, what color are you looking for? I think that's the thing which I would be going for first. And then think about the sweet spots. Of course, again, talking about sweet spots, it goes back to the way in which you tune your instrument as well. So of course, that will also affect the way the instrument responds as well.
Okay, since we're still looking at the mallet cat, the question just came in, and the question is on how relevant is the mallet cat in a concert band setting? I don't know. Have you ever used the mallet cat with playing with a band before?
Never had to, because the actual instruments are there. I mean, for me, as much as possible, if I have an actual vibraphone, an actual marimba, I'd rather use that. But for me, because I use this for my own performances outside of the concert band setting, so it's more like for Latin jazz bands, for pop bands, and so on. So instead of me lugging a huge 4.5 octave marimba or 5 octave, and a xylophone or a vibraphone on top of that, I can kind of use this in just this one instrument physically, and then the sound man doesn't have to mic up a gazillion instruments as well. But in a concert band setting, unless you need electronic instruments, or if you if you have instruments which you don't have, or let's say you need a harp, or and you don't have a harpist and you have a free mallet player at hand, then of course then I'll say, yeah, sure, if you want to use this, I mean, that's fine. But again, you can always have a pianist play that on a regular keyboard as well. You know what I mean? So again, this is really more of convenience. So it actually fits in my car. I don't have to move an entire vibraphone call or somebody to move it for me and so on.
Yeah, true. All right, back to drum set. Someone's asking, are there any tips to relax our feet when we're playing the kick drum in constant tempo? You can imagine the feet gets very tired very soon. Dr. Chua, any suggestions how to relax the feet?
I think the main thing is you practice a lot. I think a lot of people, when they are practicing on the drum set, they ignore feet exercises. You have to develop your calf muscles, and then when you step on the drums, you don't kill the drums. You don't step until you bang every time your beater bang on the kick drum. You don't kill it. You let loose. It's like your hands. You treat it like your hands. You move like your hands. So if you step very hard, every beat you hit very hard, you'll definitely get a muscle cramp.
How about the rest?
I think it's also endurance.
Yes.
Like practicing it long enough intervals. And I mean at a slow tempo that you can, like it's as if, okay, I'm just going to practice at 60 BPM for half an hour. And I'm just going to do quavers for half an hour. And if you're able to do that, you should be pretty relaxed. If you can do that for half an hour. Yeah.
True. Okay. Cymbals. That we've seen many ways of how a cymbals should be crashed. You have this, you have all that under crash and over crash. Can you share with us all your respective cymbal techniques?
Well, I think
and the different kind of sounds it produces.
I think in mostly in schools, students just don't have the strength to hold the cymbals, so they should take the cymbals as a weight training. You just do weight training, and when you're comfortable with the weight of the cymbals, then you decide what you learn how to crash.
Yeah, actually, that, yeah.
Yes.
Sorry, Mr.
The cymbal sound is it's also in the mind what kind of sound you want, and then when you do it, it will come naturally. Usually, I'll do this way. This kind of crash. And this, you hit this one first, and very fast. A little slice, but also must crash together.
What about the rest?
Joachim, you want to say?
Yeah, I was saying that. I find that a lot of students, they don't have the strength to hold crash cymbals, which is, and for me, the technique and the strength go hand in hand. Like if you can have the technique, but if you cannot carry the cymbal, you still will not be able to develop a good crash. Right? And if you can carry the cymbal but you don't crash well, it will still not sound that good. So they both go hand in hand. And it's kind of like lifting weights. You just have to, it's just muscles and you have to do it. It's not like snare drum, where you're playing and it's all these small motor movements. And so crash cymbal is a bit of a different beast in that sense. I mean, I always tell my students, look at Aaron Spears when he plays the drum set. I mean, he's a big dude, but he plays drum set super fast, and so you playing sticks you don't have to be super muscular or anything, but you do need some muscles at least to play crash cymbals. And I think the main thing when you play a crash cymbal is that flam, where both sides of the plates have to meet each other so that you get a good crash. Because if they come together flat like this, then you will get what we call an air pocket that goes. Yeah. So you don't really want that. You want the cymbal to come at an angle so that you get a nice crash.
I think one more thing is a lot of students are taking shortcuts because they don't have the strength to carry the cymbal, so they tend to put their hands through the loop and then they play like marching style. So don't do that because your hands will muffle the sound. The cymbals will not ring after you crash. So it sounds like, well, marching cymbals.
Yeah, absolutely right. And I'm glad that you guys are all saying that the main issue is strength, because every time I tell my students you need that physical strength, all of them look at me like I'm crazy. So great, thank you all for agreeing on that. Ultimately, it is about that physical strength, because and there are times, again, sometimes it also boils down to parts allocation, I think, because sometimes sometimes the smallest sized musician is given a 20-inch cymbal, crash cymbal. I mean, what is this poor child going to do? So again, giving that student the time to develop strength first before assigning crash cymbal parts would be key. I think that's one. And then again, in terms of sizing, I mean, there are 16-inch, 18-inch, 20-inch, and even bigger ones. But I don't know. For you guys, what are the sizes you guys normally use, or would you recommend in your band programs?
I mean, I
For
think
me, usually it'll be 18 or 19-inch.
Right.
yeah,
You okay?
I think it really depends on the music.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Mr. Lim will yeah,
Correct.
because I mean I've had the fortunate experience of working with SSO a few times, and I mean it's always dependent on what are we playing this week, and
Right.
you can choose 16-inch cymbals to 21, 22-inch cymbals, and it really is dependent on the piece. But in terms of the band setting, 18 to 19 would suffice. I mean, because depending on how old the kids are as well.
Yeah. Sure.
Because like you cannot give the primary school kids 20-inch cymbals. I mean, the cymbals are as big as them, and but at the same time you don't give 16-inch cymbals to a Sec 4 kid, because you will never get a big sound out of a 16-inch cymbal.
Exactly.
And so I would say 18 to 19 would be for at least in concert bands would be sufficient.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because we don't often have the luxury of having different sets of cymbals. I mean, unlike a professional orchestra. So yeah, even my recommendation would generally be the 18 or 19-inch cymbal.
Oh, next question on timpani. How do we achieve smooth timpani rolls for crescendos and decrescendos? Is there a technique difference compared to snare drum, for example?
My timpani technique is a bit different. Yeah, because if people want to say like French or German, so I play timpani sort of like the French way in that sense. Yeah, but I think the concept is the same for whatever technique you use. I mean, you always want to be relaxed, and you want to use single threads, and just trying to, again, like what Mr. Lim said before, bumping up the tempo bit by bit, making sure that you're always relaxed, and observing everything from the sound to the stick heights, to the way your hands move. Are you holding the stick one higher and one lower? And all of these things play a part and affect the sound as well.
Anyone else?
Right.
Nope. Okay. When do you know what sticks to change to when playing the timpani? For example, changing, when do you use legato sticks, when do you use staccato sticks? I guess it's the range of hardness. So I don't know. My answer will be check with your band director what kind of sound he wants. Yeah, I don't know what would you all say.
I think that too. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, a lot of it is of course dependent on the interpretation of the music, and I think as a player you need to have a voice also, and you need to have your own interpretation, and you can, I would say, try both. Like that's what the rehearsal is for anyway. If they play the passage 5 times, you can try, okay, let's try a legato stick, or let's try a staccato one, and see, does it blend well or does it stick out more? Are you supporting the music better, or does it get in the way of the music? And there's no right or wrong, I feel. It's just what is best for the music. And I think as musicians, I mean, not only as percussionists, but we should always be serving the music as best as we can.
I think one of the best ways is when you're playing, you get some of your friends stand outside and then listen to your passage, whether it's clear or is it sounds muddy. So if you have a lot of semiquavers and things like that, and you're using already something hard, and then when you play and your friends outside is thinking, hey, this is like, I can hear all the plastic sound. Maybe you're using too hard a mallets because then you lose all your timpani sound. You're just getting the skin sound. So maybe you have to change after that. So it's good to work with your friends, someone who can stand further away from you, because the sounds travel to the other side. It might be different from how you hear it from your side. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I totally agree on that last point which Lokchor brought up, because in the end of the day, I think some percussionists, they don't take what they hear from where they're standing and where they're playing with a pinch of salt. So I think, for any instrument, even for crash cymbals or anything in general, I think it's always good to have someone standing further away to give you that reference, especially if you have enough players in the ensemble or in the band or within your section itself. And yeah, being really aware of what these names of these sticks are, because they always call it, the legato stick, the staccato stick, without even knowing what it actually means, and thinking about articulation ultimately at the end of the day, like what kind of sound you're looking for.
Cool. Next question. What are some tips for improvisational ad-libs? I think maybe he's talking about drum set here.
I think for me, again, going back to the applicability of all the rudiments that you've learned on the snare drum, I think really taking those little chunks and then trying to apply it on a drum set. I think that's one starting point which you can use to develop all these different ad-libs. So again, we're just looking at developing or learning how to improvise in the end of the day, because there's so many times where you have a drum fill, and then some students just go 1 yen, 2 yen, 3 yen, 4 yen, which I think most of us have heard before. So for example, if I'm doing, and so on. But then, maybe, thinking about what can I do with a paradiddle, for example. So, instead of me just doing right, left, on a snare, maybe I just think of doing, just changing it around perhaps. So working on just, still playing semiquavers and then just using that rudiment and then applying it on different drums. Or not, or you can have flams added in, your flambadiddles and anything else as well. And then working on smaller chunks, seeing what works or what doesn't, and again, it will not happen overnight. It can't be like, okay, so I know that I can use a paradiddle, or I can know that I can use flams in my fills. It's not about just trying to play it on the spot without thinking it, because internally, because for all of us here, I would assume as well, we do spend time figuring out what works for us, because if we don't apply it and don't practice it beforehand, it is impossible to just go 1, 2, 3, do something random and so all these things that are ad-lib are technically sort of practiced in the end of the day, because we have our own idea of exactly what I want to put. Some musical ideas I may respond to because another musician is doing something different, perhaps. But again, it's having that vocabulary, like what Lokchor said much earlier on, having that vocabulary and then building up and adding on to that vocabulary, so that eventually when you are faced with a situation where you need to apply it, at least you can just draw from it straight away from like a little toolbox. I hope that kind of
Anyone else?
Yes, another way of learning is to listen to recordings and hear what other drummers do, and you can just start learning with imitation to their feelings, and then after that, then you can do your own ideas.
Transcribe drum solos.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the best ways to learn.
Transcribe.
I think also for the drum set, there are people who play drum set, but without knowing what kind of genre they are playing on. Like if they are playing rock music or they are playing pop music, they apply jazz styles on it, things like that. So they really need to hear a lot of recordings. Like if they play jazz, whether to swing it or not, it's not every time jazz you have to swing it, So you have to listen to a lot. So increase your vocabulary and listen to a lot of recordings. Yeah.
Okay. A question just came. I guess so that all answers the Hafiz. If that answers your question on what is the best way to create a drum solo, I hope that can answer it. And there from Adrian. This is somebody called Adrian. He's asking, how do I improve my underdeveloped hand. How would you answer this?
I suppose that is a left hand.
I mean, I guess it depends which is your master hand.
Right.
So I don't know. What would you tell them? What would you?
Yeah, start practicing
Start
everything
with
with that hand.
that hand.
Yeah. So
Just do
whichever is
more.
your weaker hand. Yeah.
And I guess ultimately it's also about developing that set of muscles. So it's really, really about strengthening. Like similarly, we were talking about like crash cymbals, building that muscles strength. Because if you don't use that left hand, for example, as much, then it's again about what kind of exercises can you do to physically strengthen yourself as well.
I think
Great.
So what you can do is like do everyday things with that hand as well. So I'm a right-hander, but I started brushing my teeth with my left hand a couple of years ago. And I've been doing that every day ever since.
Wow.
And so I guess it's maybe 7-8 years now already. Yeah. And so much so that when I use my right hand, it starts to feel a bit weird.
Right.
But yeah, just do everything with your left hand instead. Try eating with your left hand. I fractured my right knuckle before this right pinky, and I was in a cast for a month, so I had to eat with my left hand. So like using chopsticks, spoons, and things like that. So like, I mean, obviously you cannot use your right hand already, so you kind of have to use your left hand, and that's one of the ways you can develop your weaker hand in that sense.
Great. We just have 5 more minutes, and I think it's a good time to come to our last question. I mean, in this period where all the band students are stuck at home, with or without instruments, most probably without, but hopefully if they still have a drum pad or drumstick, or if they don't have anything, what can they do? What are some of the exercises that they can do at home? Would you recommend?
Practice those exercises we upload for you.
What if they don't have a drum? What if they don't have a drum pad and drumstick?
Yes.
I think even simple exercises
Yes.
like learning how to subdivide, learning to sing along with a metronome, I think that'll help, because a lot of percussionists, and I think generally musicians, they don't really think about the idea that if you aren't able to sing it, you aren't able, you will not be able to play it. This whole idea, because I think Zoltan Kodály said that if you are able to sing it, you can play it. So I think that is something which I think all students should be aware of. Be able to sing, be it even just learning how to subdivide 1E and a 2 and 3E and a 4 and with a metronome, that helps you internalize your pulse as well. So that's something which anybody can work on. Just downloading an app for a metronome at home, and then at least singing along with that, and not being afraid.
Memorizing tempo markings.
Yeah, perhaps that too. Yeah, at least they'll understand that.
What's 80? What's 80? What's 90?
Not a bit extreme.
I mean, it's helpful because
yes, it is.
Because I can. I mean, I'm not a drummer, of course, but I can just imagine it's helpful that if I need to keep a steady tempo, and I need to, and I'm going off course, I know immediately. If I need to stick to crotchet equals 120, for example. But okay, cool. What else? What other exercises do you have in mind?
Okay, for the
sorry, Mr. Lim.
Okay, for mallet players, you don't need to have a mallet cat or instruments. You can just maybe put 4 pillows there, and then you just work on your sticking and your stick strength.
A long time ago, before I even owned my first mallet instrument at home, I used to draw everything out on a piece of paper, like A3 size paper, draw out individual parts. Yeah, and then after I use drumsticks to kind of give myself a sensation of like, okay, I am playing a major scale. I try to force myself to even think, re mi fa sol la si, yeah, so that would be helpful.
Yeah, I also want to say, like, use pillows if you don't have drum pads, because that really works like the wrist muscles.
Minky, I think you're drumming. Are you drumming something?
Oh yes.
Yeah,
Sorry.
We can hear you.
I'm tapping my drum pad.
Yeah.
That's the disease of a
percussionist. Using a pillow if you don't have a drum pad, and if you don't have drumsticks or anything, like, I mean, simple things like just like tapping your knee, doing like single strokes. You can even do doubles,
body percussion
or
stuff.
paradiddles. Yeah, anything that can help you sort of move your wrist and exercise those muscles and rhythms. It will definitely help you.
And then sometimes, I mean, like you were saying, body percussion. So I mean, with my kids, sometimes I actually will ask them to, work on exercises like this, where this is their bass drum, this is their snare drum, and then if they can snap their fingers, this is their hi-hat. So even just developing simple rhythms like this, so that they can learn on, working on, with a metronome per se, things like that. You can have a bit of fun with it, but all these movements also help in internalizing time and everything else as well.
Cool. Loktra, anything from you?
Well, same thing. Work with your hands. Play on your body or play on the pillow, something like that. Just work on your limbs and develop your calf muscle too.
Maybe after this, we can also share some YouTube links that they could learn body percussion.
Sure.
In the Facebook or somewhere.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, so they can do some exercises at home as well, just to have fun with the whole family as well.
But in the end, it's all about keeping your muscles active. And again, not just using the computer at home all the time, especially now that the holidays are coming. It's really doing a bit of physical exercise. I think that will help quite a bit in the long term.
Cool. Before we wrap up, any last words from anyone on how we should, how to become a better percussionist?
Practice.
Yes, practice.
I think
You can't run away from it.
Yeah,
And metronome is your best friend.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, and be patient also. Yeah. Nobody improved overnight. As in, like
Exactly.
nobody. Yeah. So it takes a long time. So be patient with yourself.
Yeah, I think going back to one of the points about looking for shortcuts, because a lot of times we always want everything to be achieved so quickly and in as short a period of time. You have to realize that it will take time. You have to give it space, and if you can't get it right today, come back again to it tomorrow. And it takes time for your brain to also process all this new information that you are trying to do with your hands as well, and eventually your feet.
And I think with that, we like to thank all four of you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
For your fantastic session. And with that, we have come to the end of the percussion online with the pros. And come back again at 4:30, where we'll be back with the oboes. Oboe is 3 oboists. And if you like what we're doing, please like our Facebook page, and to keep up to date with what the BDAS is currently presenting. So see you later at 4:30. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thanks for having us.
Bye, thank
Bye.
you.
Stay safe.
Stay safe.